This video is an explanation of how to use an application for the Mac called xAPITester. This is what the app looks like when you first open it. I've opened it with this box up here not checked. Therefore, it's going to open a connection to the radio as a secondary client, not as the primary graphical user interface, not as a smart SDR equivalent. This box opens to ask you, do you want to make a local connection or do you want to make a smart link connection? It works essentially the same way that the equivalent box in smart SDR works. So you can see I have one radio on my network. If I had multiple radios, they would be in this list here. I can highlight it and click connect, and it will go out and attempt to connect the radio. So at the top of this window, I have a section that I call objects, and what it says is it's connected to a radio. That radio's name is Doug's Flex, and this is the model. At the bottom is what I call commands and replies. So when I attempted the connection to the radio, a couple of informational messages were generated. They're shown here in white. They have these dashes on either end of them. They didn't come from the radio. The blue items here came back from the radio just as a result of making the connection. And then some status messages appear. You can see they start with S, and then they have this big long hex number, which is your connection handle. You can see up in the corner here your connection handle, which this field is highlighted this same color. So anything this color was sent by the radio to your connection handle. Then there's a vertical bar, and then everything after this is a response from the radio. And as you can see, some of these responses are pretty lengthy, and that's not the longest one. Then in green here we have commands that I've sent. So all commands start with a C and a sequence number. This one happens to be 0, and then a vertical bar, and here's the command that was sent. You can see responses coming back. So this R0 here is a response to command 0. So then there's a whole series of commands that I sent, a lot of subscriptions telling it to let me know about certain things. Then one other thing here, the last command you see is a keep alive enable. There's a message here that says the pinger was started. So when you send it keep alive enable, it requires you to ping the radio periodically in order to keep the connection going. As you can see, there are lots of other things here, lots of meters, all sorts of settings and information about the radio. Many of these as a result of all those subscription commands. I told you that I'm pinging the radio, but I have a setting up here that says don't bother to show me those because they tend to clutter up the display. But I'll click show pings, and you'll see that roughly every second there's a ping being sent. We're not seeing the reply to it, but if I click this box here, show all replies, now you can see that for each ping sent there's a reply that basically says 0. The reply is this 0 here between the two vertical bars, and that 0 basically means everything worked. So I'm going to turn those off again because, as I said, they clutter up the display. This particular box tries to keep everything so that you can see the last thing that came in. So it will scroll down as things come in. You can always scroll back up. You can always scroll sideways to see some of these very long messages that come in here. As you can see, some of them are quite long. Now if you want to cause the radio to do something, you can go up here to the command entry and you can type in something. For example, if I say display pan create frequency equal 15.000, in other words WWV, and hit enter, first of all, my message gets sent out. I got to scroll back to find it. Here it is. Command 279 was what I entered up here. All of this information below it came back as a result of that. You can see that most of it has my connection handle, status, and then the handle. But some of them have a status with a handle of 0. Those are sort of generic messages to anyone who's listening. So just as I have this client connected to the radio, you could have multiple clients connected to the radio in addition to Smart SDR, as long as there's only one GUI client. So what happened in the top here, previously there was just this first line, radio, the purple line. Now it says, oh, there's a pan adapter, because I told it to create the pan adapter, and that pan adapter has a waterfall. So the pan adapter has what's called a stream ID, here it is, and a few pieces of information just to help you understand what got created. Then there's a waterfall stream that was created, and then underneath this pan adapter there's a slice, and that slice has this stream ID and has some parameters that I've shown here. This part of the screen I call objects, and you can filter it. So right now you may have noticed I have the filter set to exclude meter. So if I change that to say none, now you can see that under the slice there are 4 meters that relate to that slice, but in addition there are a lot of other meters. So there they are, and as you can see, it's a lot of information and sometimes not useful to look at, not important to look at, so I frequently run with meter excluded, and that makes the display a little simpler. Now this display is updated once a second, so this sort of hierarchy of parts is redrawn every second. So if I go up here and say change my command to say display pan create 14,250, 20 meters, a lot of stuff comes back as a result of that command, but you also see that now we have 2 pan adapters with 2 different stream IDs, with 2 different waterfalls, with slices at 2 different frequencies. And if I again turn off my don't show me meters, you can see that there are a number of meters related to the slice, and then all these meters that are more generic in nature. So I'm going to put my exclude back on here, make this simpler. The filtering can be none, which I just showed you. You can filter by prefix, so for instance you could say show me anything that starts with pan. Filter by contains, I could say filter contains FREQ, and it would show me any part of the display that has that string in it. So you can do a lot of different things here. There's a similar filter for this part of the screen. So for instance I can go in and say filter prefix slice, and it'll only show me commands down here that start with slice. If I put it back to none, now we see everything. There's one other piece that's useful for this bottom display, and that's this button here, show timestamps. So if I click that, what you get down here, starting at 0, back here when it first started, is minutes or seconds rather, and milliseconds. So you can get some idea of how long things take, and when you send a particular command, how long is it before the next command shows up, and so forth. So that's very useful if you're trying to understand the timing. Down in the lower right corner here, you have some buttons that relate to this part of the screen, to the commands and replies. So you can highlight something here. Let's say I highlight waveform installed list. I can say copy to command, and it will copy it up here into this area where you can now send that as a command. You may not want to. You can copy it to the clipboard by copying this. You can clear this entire area, or you can save it and then later load it back in again. If you have something you're studying, you want to save it, come back to it later, look at it in here. That gives you a general overview of how this works. At the moment, we're connected not as a GUI, but as just an additional client. I will come back later and make another video to explain how things are different when you connect as a GUI, and I will also come back to explain about command macros, the buttons down here on the left. One other thing I can show you while I'm here is if you put your cursor here, you can use the cursor up and down keys to walk through all of the commands you've typed previously. So that allows you to do commands. They get saved. You can go back to them if you need to do them again. This button here, Clear It Connect, clears all this stuff every time you connect, which is useful. This one over here, if it's checked, clears this command area every time you push the send button or hit enter. Also, you can see there's an indicator here that says we're connected locally. Had we made this connection with SmartLink, this would say SmartLink. And then up here the button says disconnect, and if we disconnect, it stops the pinger. Disconnects gives you the reason, in this case normal, and would allow you to now connect again. All of this information stays here, so you can go look at it if you like, and when you connect, since I have Clear It Connect checked, they will both be cleared and start over again. So I think that's it for today. You can see name of the product is xAPITester. If you look at my GitHub page, Doug PA, capital D, smaller OUG, capital P, capital A. You can find all the source code for this as well as a downloadable executable. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Thanks for watching.